I decided to write this for a few reasons. One, to honor my fallen comrades. Well, to be perfectly honest, I didn't actually see them die. Either way, their bodies now belong to the cave people, albeit dead or alive. And two, because the world needs to know that they exist. Of course, it says we discovered, but I suppose it's only I who found them, since it was just me who survived the onslaught. That is to say that no one else escaped, that I know of. It's always been a childhood dream of mine to go further in than any man alive. Ever since I learned about it as a child, I wanted to explore the entire cave, to put things into perspective. Experts have estimated the cave to be over 1,000 miles long. So far, only 400 miles or so have been mapped out. Its nickname is the Limestone Labyrinth. An apt description if you ask me. There's also 200 other caves that have connected or broken off from the main, self-made structure. To say that Mammoth Cave is intimidating may just be the understatement of the century. My name is Joe. I'm known as the endless thrill seeker in my town. A local hero? You could hardly say that. Growing up in the backwoods of Kentucky, I've naturally become an experienced woodsman who has spent many years in the great outdoors. Hunting, fishing, camping, rappelling, mountain climbing, free-falling and cave diving. I've gone spelunking while fearlessly exploring uncharted territories and everything in between. Even 4 years in the military. Needless to say, I'm an adrenaline junkie. I suppose I should begin by explaining a few things. I need to be completely transparent and upfront with everyone. No, this isn't a monster, demon, or even a ghost story. Something to note, that it isn't Predator, which you can visually see most of the time, but what you can't see that scares me the most. Not only the darkness in these massive underground endless tunnels and caves, but also fear of the unknown. It's one thing to see a wolf or bear. I can deal with that. Run for the truck and haul ass. But how the hell do you escape something you have never even heard of? Who knows what the hell is even in there? Those were my thoughts as I weighed the risks before entering illegally. Oh wait, I forgot to tell you. Wildlife experts say there are over 130 different species of animals within the cave. Those are just the ones we know of. The cave boasts some of the richest cavernicolous creatures, including 14 species of troglobites, animals that need to live in caves, and trogophiles, animals that can live in or outside caves, known only to exist there. One of the park's most well-known and unusual species is the eyeless cavefish, which has adapted to the lightless environment by no longer growing eyes. The cave system of Mammoth Cave National Park began to form more than 280 million years ago. The earth rose and twisted and allowed water to erode the rock into the current cave system. Mammoth Cave was created by the natural process of limestone erosion known as karst topography. During this process, rain and rivers slowly dissolve and shape soft limestone, creating a vast system of caves. Underground rivers are still carving new passages today. Beyond their scientific and recreational value, karst aquifers like Mammoth Cave provide drinking water for approximately 40% of the US population. The surrounding forest contains one of the most diverse habitats in the nation, supporting more than 1,300 flowering species and bird species like bald eagles, wood warblers, and thrushes. You can see flowers along the hiking trails. In the 1800s, railroads were the best ways to access the cave. The first railroad to the area opened in 1859, and by 1886, the line ran directly to the cave, bringing in tens of thousands of visitors every year. Two of the original locomotives, number 4 and number 2, are on display today in the Mammoth Cave terminus at the end of the line. You can use the historic Mammoth Cave Railroad bike and hike trail to access the locomotives via the old railroad corridor. Well, now that you know a little history about myself and the cave, I'll get right to it. This is simply my tale of the deepest, darkest depths of the largest cave system in the world. Admittedly, making the biggest mistake of my life, venturing into the unexplored areas. There is a reason we aren't meant to dwell in caves. This is the stuff nightmares are made of. Our group consisted of myself and 3 military buddies, John, Mark, and Tom. John and Mark I've known since we were kids, best friends for years. Just a few crazy guys from the backwoods of Kentucky. Nothing too special about us, so to speak. However, Tom, he's the real badass of the group. Older fellow in his 40s, a tough-as-nails kind of guy. Very quiet. One of those really rough-looking cigarette-smoking, gun-toting lunatics that you just wouldn't want to mess with. He never told us the kind of things he experienced overseas, and we never asked. Tom would be our guide, being the most experienced in Mammoth Cave of the group. The 4 of us spent weeks preparing for this expedition, saved up money, took off from work, and gathered all the supplies and gear necessary. Pack clothes, though packing lightly. Many portions of the cave are so small you have to army crawl or simply suck in your fat gut to fit through the narrow paths. The walls close in so tight you can barely breathe in some places. For the most part, almost all caves tend to stay at a reasonable 52 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 11 degrees Celsius for all you foreigners. So we wear long-sleeve shirts and cargo pants naturally. Everyone checked to make sure they had extra flashlights, knives, backup batteries, climbing equipment, ropes and more. Hell, I even packed some waterproof matches, just in case. Tom, being the over-prepared guy he is, never leaves home without his beloved 45 caliber M1911, used by the US military for decades. A very tough and durable weapon to be sure. After feeling as though we were all ready to make the trip, the truck was loaded up with all our gear and 4 adventurous crazy bastards looking for the next thrill. Fortunately, it's a 4-door truck with a 6-foot bed and plenty of space. "Son, do you even know where the hell you're going?" Tom says with a cigarette in his mouth, ashes falling onto his bare skin. He doesn't even flinch. "No, not exactly, Tom. I just thought." Just then, the driver's side door flings open as I'm forcefully tossed from my seat. "Hey, it's my truck, you asshole!" I yell with confidence, thrusting my chest forward and chin up high. "Yup, and I'm driving. Got a problem? Then move me," Tom says as he flicks the cigarette in my face. John and Mark both look at me with a kind of, "Hey, what do you want us to do" expression, but only stand and watch. With a deep sigh and exhale, I accept defeat as I whimper and open the door to the back seat, murmuring to myself while doing so, sitting behind Tom, looking at the rope in my lap, just thinking, hey, what if I wrap this around? Oh, damn. Sorry. Off to a rather bad start. Really need to get out of my own head sometimes. Right, so back to our adventure. Tom starts my truck. The engine roars loudly and the exhaust is fired up. Yeah, it's one of those 80s truck with no catalytic converter. A 3-inch straight pipe all the way from the headers to the engine to the muffler, which doesn't really muffle all that much. It's just loud, okay? Take my word for it. There I go again, trailing off. Tom hits the gas pedal, revving the engine and shifting into drive. Forward the truck moves, shaking violently as the terrain is rough in the mountains. Mark speaks up. Yo Tom, ease it up a bit, would you? Tom doesn't say a word, adjusting the rearview mirror, glaring directly at Mark sitting next to me. If I didn't know any better, I'd say he was looking into his soul. The rest of us appeared puzzled, and looking at one another. Tom seems a bit off today, though we say nothing. Damn it, I lost my dog in the woods today. Took him for a hike, spent all morning looking for the bastard. Thor never came home, Tom said while staring at the rocky roads ahead. The silence in the truck remains, only hearing the truck's engine continuing to rumble as the gravel road is shooting small rocks from the tires and sounds of nature from the wilderness around us. Moments pass. Mark taps Tom on the shoulder. Hey, sorry man. Maybe he'll be home by the time we get back, Mark says with assurance. Everyone else yells in unison. Yeah. Tom doesn't say a word and looks out the window at a deer scurrying off into the woods. The trip to get there is a few more hours of banter, laughing and joking, eating beef jerky and smashing a few cold ones along the way. Maybe not the brightest idea, but if you have time to think, you have time to drink. Am I right? we're almost there. Hope you guys brought your Cub Scout badges. You're about to see some serious shit," Tom says as he throws his final cigarette from the truck. Each of us looking at one another, smiling like, "Oh, yeah, sure," mockingly. Departing the truck and grabbing our gear, we park far in the woods. You see, you can take tours of small lengths to the cave itself to get a glimpse of what it's like. However, we are venturing into a more unknown entrance. It's still midday and the sun is out. Tom leads the way. We began hiking to our final destination. All along the unmarked trail, I tie red little banners with reflectors on small trees to hopefully be able to find these to find our way back to the truck for the journey home. Tom looks down, holding a paper hand-drawn map. He stops and points. "That way," saying as he commands us. I veer in John's direction with an unsure expression on my face, signaling, "Is he sure?" Along the hike, we are met by several creatures of the forest, including squirrels, birds, deer, and even a black bear. Undeterred, we push forward and reach a large opening in the ground. It's so dark, you can't see anything but the walls for a few feet. "This is it, boys. Tie a rope around that tree. We go in here," Tom says while pointing down into the depths of hell. Each man gears up and slowly rappels down the rope hanging over 100 feet deep. 4 LED headlamps are on, brightly looking in every direction, almost like how you see spotlights in the sky. On the way down the massive and seemingly dark hole, I can feel it getting colder. The walls are wet and slick. Our footwear are weatherproof tactical Magnum boots with slip resistance and extra ankle support for climbing. Finally, my feet touch solid ground as I unhook myself from the rope. Reaching for the 3-cell police-style mag light attached to my belt, I shine it upwards. I can see the top of the hole with this particular flashlight. The distance range for the mag light is roughly 450 yards, or 411 meters. John beckons me to follow, as Tom has already begun his trek forward into the cave. This path is open widely, for as far forward as we can see. Looking upwards, you'll see stalactite formations hanging from the ceiling. Some rooms are as large as an auditorium. Our headlamps are currently what gives us illumination. Placing my 3-cell mag light back into its holster, we move forward. Walking carelessly for roughly 2 to 3 miles, we reach a portion of the cave, which changes drastically. Tom, John, and Mark rested briefly before dropping to their bellies to crawl hundreds of yards through a narrow passage, their packs and helmets scraping under a rock ceiling barely 2 feet high. The colored rocks ranged from beige to dark brown. After many hours in the 51-degree subterranean darkness, our clothes are dirt-caked, and we are still working toward a remote section where the known map stops. The next part of the path we're on leads to an area where patience is paramount. Tom leads the way. Gripping a rocky ledge deep on the ground, he lowered himself gingerly down a 12-foot drop-off. His headlamp flashing past rock walls dotted with sparkling gypsum in the remote section off-limits to tourists and recreational cavers. There were 8-inch ledges we had to slowly walk across, using only our gloves to grip onto certain dips in the cave walls. Eventually, reaching a somewhat normal path again, where we would walk upright, or led deeper and deeper into the dark depths. Or so I thought. Mark says he sees light seeping in up ahead. Our group moves towards it cautiously. There's another entrance Thomas led us to that was partly developed for tours before it was abandoned during World War II. Steep steps descended through rock and into a trail filled with cave crickets, which eventually gave way to areas of rockfall, caverns, and drop-offs. Crunching in the silence, our trek took us past broken oil lamps, abandoned shoes, and rusty sardine tins from the 1930s and 1940s. Footprints made decades ago were frozen in the dust, as if on the moon. In one spot, ancient shark teeth were embedded in the wall. You could even say we found a place that's frozen in time. By late evening, our group had hiked, climbed, and crawled through rock piles small passages, soaring domes and drop-offs in a section called New Discovery, dubbed in the 1930s. We passed pools with translucent crayfish and walls plastered with gypsum blooms that looked like flowers. Several times we spotted passages that hadn't been explored, making notes for future trips. During breaks, we sat in the dust and rocks, eating candy bars and canned sausages, and trading stories about cave trips and war stories from our time in the military. At this point, we were quite deep within the cave. John pulls me to the side to tell me that an hour ago, he swore he saw a creature standing over 8 feet tall with 4 arms, stray long hairs hanging from the back of its head. He was terrified, and I believed him. I have no idea how I didn't notice the change in him. Of course, he is always so quiet. It can be hard to notice, I suppose. Urging Tom over to have John tell him everything he has seen. There is a very loud, low-pitched growl, which we hear very audibly. The roars grow louder with each passing moment. Tom instructs us to shut off our headlamps. A slight miscalculation on our part. A few of us thought the darkness would aid us in this situation. Our mistake was thinking the dark was our friend. What we didn't realize is, we merely adopted the darkness. These creatures or cave people were born in it. I can feel the ground of the cave vibrate violently as we are quickly surrounded by yelling and screaming from an unknown language. Tom lets out a deathly scream. I can hear him fighting for his life. John turns on his headlamp. I grab my 3-cell mech light, shining it in the direction of the struggle. As described moments ago, there before us stands a massive being with 4 arms with a strange shaped head, almost cone-shaped, and I see Tom damn near being squeezed to death. He reaches for his gun and fires twice in the torso of the being, strangling him. It drops Tom and retreats. Now all of our lights are on, and we make a run for it, moving as quickly as possible. Myself, John and Mark run as if we're being hunted. At this point, it's fair to say we are. Winded and sore, Mark stops to regain his composure and takes a breath. "Where's Tom at? Wasn't he right behind us?" Mark asks, unsure of what happened. Looking around, we see no sign of him as the 3 of us discuss the risk-reward ratio of going back for him. "Well, they're sure as hell hostile, and the only gun in this cave is half a mile back that way," John says. "Yes, and he was our only guide and a dear friend. I say we go back for him. Plus, we have no idea where we are or which way is out," I say unconvincingly. After a few moments of arguing and pleading our cases, we are soon interrupted by that same terrifying loud growl. "Shit, let's go!" Mark yells. Though we are moving at rapid speeds, I can hear more footsteps closing in all around us. Mark is in front of me, and John behind in the last position. I see Mark hit a wall. Only, it wasn't a cave wall, but another cave person creature. He fell to the ground. The creature leans down and grabs him, lifting him only using 2 of its 4 arms. The other 2 strikes down on Mark's face. I see his head fall forward into the creature's chest. It looks down at me and smiles. John and I turn and flee immediately in the opposite direction. We tremble in fear at the sight of these beast-like people. The ground of the cave is uneven, and the terrain is quite rough. John falls face first, hitting his chest on the solid floor. I stop to help him as he struggles to free his boot from a hole. The same cries are heard in the area we ran from before. John is still stuck, and his boot is lodged tightly. He yells for me to run and leave him. After moments of attempting to cut his boot off, I see the same creature from before approaching. I blind it with my mech light as it screeches loudly, swiping at the nothing. It falls to the ground and hurls a large rock at me. Soon, finding John on the ground, he also attempts to blind the towering creature kneeling above him. It grabs John lying on the ground nearby and starts to gnaw on him and bites his leg clean off. This damn thing is so strong, I knew immediately I stood no chance in a fight against it. Once more, John yells in agony and demands I run like hell, tossing me the hand-drawn map which Tom had held earlier. I take off running again, at full speed, in horror as I heard my best friend being torn limb by limb helplessly. His screams will be with me forever. I ran for what felt like hours. I went up and down in the cavern. Eventually, I slept in a very low ceiling room that I was certain that they could not reach me. Their bodies were far too large to reach me. The cave grew quiet. I heard only crickets and my heavy breathing as I slowly crept into a restless sleep. My head lay on my back. After some time, I feel water dripping onto my face. I woke up to a dim light on my flashlight. Tapping on it, trying to bring back illumination, it dies completely. Apparently, I had left my mag light on by mistake. There's also a cave salamander on my chest, which is multicolored. While running, I had lost most of my supplies. I still have rope, matches, food and water. My headlamp still works for now. My extra batteries must have fallen out during my retreat. I'm still wearing a compass on my wristwatch, which evidently is not as waterproof as it's advertised. Oh wait, never mind. The watch is now actually cracked and broken, but the compass appears to still be functional. All I have now for a guide is this crudely drawn map and compass while deep underground. I'm now afraid of every single noise I hear. Paranoia kicks in at an all-time high. Continuing to backtrack as well as possible, I notice bats are moving rapidly in one specific area. I do my best to follow them, as some areas are very narrow and low to the ground. I can still hear bats screeching in the distance. However, I can no longer see them. Hoping like hell they are heading towards any exit. Chasing the faint sounds of wings flapping, I fall on top of these old steep steps. To my amazement, I made it back to an entrance earlier shown by Tom. At this point, I had been running for days. I've fallen many times, am completely lost, bruised and bloody. My clothes are soaking wet, but I'm alive. With all my strength I have left, I pull myself up and cautiously make my way up the unkempt stairs. The sound of roaring in the distance quickens my pace significantly. No matter what that is, I do not want to come face to face with those things again. It's safe to say, my days of cave exploration is over. I'm out of the deep dark abyss, now in the forest, once again lost, but on familiar territory. Land. I can see a stream of water nearby. Thinking to myself that I'm all out of water, I grab my canteen, then I lean over to take a drink out of the clear spring water that I hope is clean and not contaminated by giardia cysts and cryptosporidium oocysts, which can cause diarrhea or much worse. Then I began dunking my canteen on the water, filling it up. Sitting for a break and a breather, I observe the area around me and begin to notice the stream is flowing rapidly. I quickly remembered from my time in the wilderness to follow water leading downstream. Eventually, it will lead to a river or even civilization. After gulping down as much water as my body holds, I begin to follow the waterway. Traveling for hours, I reach a clearing in what looks like to be some type of structures. I try to yell out for help, but my vocal cords are damaged. I can barely even speak. In this moment, I'm grateful for that fact. I've now reached an entire colony of these cave people. Dozens of them are moving about, some gathering wood. They are speaking to each other with their hand movements mostly, and some grunting. I see one completely rip a small tree from its roots in the ground and walk away with it under one arm. My mouth drops, and I gasp quietly upon seeing so many of them. Just then, an idea occurs to me. Maybe they aren't violent people, as I previously thought. Although I'm pretty sure they killed my friends. But we were intruding in their home. I mean, if someone broke in my house, I would shoot them, no question about it. That being said, I'm not risking certain death by confronting these giants. From a good distance, I continue to watch them for days, studying them. In my pack, I have a paper and pen. I wrote notes down as much as I could. Here are some things I transcribed. Day 1. I saw a smaller giant-like person join the group. It looked oddly different than the others, and spoke more audibly than the rest. The smaller ones collect berries and hunt smaller animals, vermin and such. Day 2. The giants seem to have some intelligence about them, as they are using tools and building structures out in the forest. I saw Tom dragged from the cave opening, and the creatures shrieking and yelling when they saw him. I covered my mouth as I saw Tom barely breathing. One of them carried him back inside, as the others were flailing their arms violently at Tom. I never saw him again after that. Day 3. The smaller giant cave people sleep outside the caves, while the larger ones live deep within. They hunt only at night and, well, work during the day, so to speak. Their skin is light brown toned, best I can describe it. Day 4. Well, it seems as though they can't hear very well, which is why they don't talk or grunt a whole lot. So that explains the body language and rapid hand movements. I just saw a smaller cave person point in my direction. Day 5. I left the area. I couldn't risk being caught again. My location had been compromised, and I have nothing left to eat. Retreating is the only option at this point. I can only imagine what would happen if I were captured as well. Day 6. I took a very long way around the colony of giants. Along the way, I caught and ate a wild animal. Not my proudest moment, but screw you. I may die if I don't get some nutrition in me soon. I don't know what day it is anymore. If the cave goes on for 1,000 miles, there's no way of telling how long these woods go on for. My compass has failed now. I've tried following the northern star, checking trees for moss. I thought the cave system was bad. Now I know. It is an ironic habit of human beings to run faster when we have lost our way. Here I am, deep in the forest with barely anything. This may seem counterproductive, but I move only at night as the days are too hot. Many nights come and go, and I think I can see a mountain in the distance. If I can reach the top, maybe I can see a landmark to head towards, or with some luck, maybe even a home. I rest every chance I get as my body is weak, taking every opportunity to fill up my canteen once more. Still afraid of every noise I hear, leaves rustling and branches breaking at any time at night. My own over-exaggerated movements sometimes startle me. I begin to slowly venture towards the mountain in the distance. Traveling for a few more days now, I collapse to the ground and pass out of pure exhaustion. No idea how long I'm out for, but I'm awakened again and completely disoriented while being entirely doused in water. Frantically sitting up, I see 2 men with rifles standing around, and one is looking down at me. "Hey, this son of a bitch ain't dead," one says. The other turns to face me. "Well, I'll be damned," the larger man bellows out with an accent even I can barely understand. "Where am I?" I ask weakly. The first man laughs and says, "You're a long way from home, son. Here, let's get you up." The 2 men carry me to an ATV and lay me down next to a dead deer in the back of the four-wheeler, which I assume they recently just caught and plan to eat. Hope I'm not next. The trails are bumpy, but yet somehow, I fall asleep on top of the deer. When I come to, I see a barn, a farmhouse, and 2 double-wide trailers with tons of farm animals frolicking about in the pasture. Eventually, the men guide me to a shack where a young woman nurses me back to health and takes me to the local sheriff's department, where I get in touch with family, and a deputy takes me to the local bus station. I relax and look back on the last few weeks as I make my way back home. I'm forever grateful to that random redneck family who saved my life. I wish I had a chance to thank you. Quite frankly, I still don't know where I was or who you are. If you ever travel to Kentucky, and want to tour our caves. Please, be careful. There's still so much more we may never know about.